We're live again. Episode 2 of what do you want to call it? What's this show called? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But like we did yesterday, we want to go over the news, the trending news. We're using X to find some of this news and just we're just going to talk about our opinions on each story, and feel free to leave comments in the comments section of each platform, and we will get it here and we'll bring some of those comments up and discuss them and answer those questions if they're questions.
Yeah,
So I just
a name of a show is so overrated. Who needs a name?
that's a good point. So Ed, I just want to jump right into this, right? Just want to get into some of the top stories. As you see, I'm here on X. I'm looking up some of the trending stories.
I think, Brian, I think it's important if people want to leave comments while we're talking and comments that we can see, you have to click through to StreamYard and leave a comment through the StreamYard app. Otherwise, we won't see your comment until after the show. But Brian loves to bring comments up onto the screen and talk about them. So if you are watching, I definitely suggest clicking through to StreamYard.
Well, if you're on X, you can just click the video and comment within the video, and it would appear here. So that's if you're on YouTube or on Facebook.
I believe YouTube and Facebook go through automatically, so you don't need to go through. But go
all right.
ahead.
So, like I said, let's jump right into this. The first story I want to touch on is that. Let's see. What should I get to? I want to talk about Mark Hamill and Mark Cuban. They apparently have endorsed Joe Biden in a significant show of political allegiance. It says Brian Krassenstein, along with notable figures such as Mark Hamill, Mark Cuban,
You made
Melania.
Grok.
This is Grok. Grok is really kind of screwed up here. So Mark Hamill, he made a post and he said that he was basically voting for Biden again. This caused, here's Mark Hamill's post. Breaking, Mark Hamill has announced he will be supporting President Biden over Donald Trump. And this is after Biden wins. That account on X said that Mark Cuban has announced he will be supporting President Biden over Donald Trump. This caused everybody to basically say, breaking, Scott Huffman has announced he will be supporting President Biden over Donald Trump. John Pavlitz has announced he will be supporting Mark Hamill in supporting President Biden over Donald Trump. So it kind of created this chain reaction where
Isn't this like obvious? Like, did anybody really think Mark Hamill's going to support Donald Trump? Did anybody think that? I mean, Brian Krassenstein. Did anybody really think Brian Krassenstein wouldn't be supporting Joe Biden? I mean, Brian's like a hardcore leftist, right?
So I want to bring something up because it does seem that things are swinging more towards Joe Biden. This is the prediction markets, and this is predicted. If you see Joe Biden is up 52 to 45 over Trump. If you look at the chart, so we're going to go back 90 days, right? And the light line is Biden, the dark line is Trump. And if you see, Trump was up most of February and half of March until they became to even out. And now all of a sudden, starting at the beginning of this month, Joe Biden took off. So I don't know what's happening. Do you have any suggestions as to
Maybe
why
it's all the abortion rulings. Do you think it could be all the abortion laws like in Florida, and now we have it in Arizona? The Supreme Court basically upheld that old ancient law. I think maybe people are realizing, wait a minute, Biden has a good shot because so many women and so many people who are pro-choice are going to come out and vote. And when they're voting for, like in Florida, they're actually voting on the issue. When they vote on that issue, they're also going to vote for the president. And I don't think too many people who are very pro-choice are going to take Trump over Biden.
That's a good point, and I do think the abortion, the rulings are the ruling in Florida and then in Arizona, I do feel that that may have actually caused people to say, "Hey, this isn't going to go so well for Trump." Along with, of course, the Manhattan case beginning next week, the 15th. Next week is that? Yeah, next week.
So is that
Jury's
case
last.
going to be televised? I'm hearing a lot of conflicting information. Will that New York criminal case be televised? It's in state court, so cameras are typically allowed if the judge allows them.
I haven't heard it will be. You would think that if it was, you'd have more people actually talking about this, because it would be a big deal. I mean, this would be kind of like the O.J. Simpson trial. It's the first criminal trial of a former president. So I'm guessing it's not. I think that if it was, we'd be hearing more about it. The jury selection starts next week. It's going to be interesting. So Joe Exotic has a jailhouse interview with Laura Loomer. Did you see this,
Wow.
Ed?
No, I did not see that. That's amazing.
Grok's description here in a highly anticipated interview with from his Florida jail cell during the pandemic lockdown, Tiger King, also known as Joe Exotic, sat down with Laura Loomer. So this happened a while ago for an exclusive discussion. The conversation, part of Loomer Unleash's 40th episode, delved into the infamous allegations against Carol Baskin. We actually know Carol Baskin, believe it or not. We've uh, talked to her, spoken to her. We've introduced her to some business opportunities way back then. But he talks about the allegations against Carol Baskin and the ongoing support for his release. I'm a little bit afraid to read Grok because I feel it's not getting everything correct. I think this interview probably happened more recently. Let's actually open it up and see. We're going to have to go through all the
Laura
ads.
Loomer. That's great. I
I
mean,
don't want to go through all the ads here.
I
So
mean, what better person to interview a crazy nutcase in prison than Laura Loomer?
I wonder if she lured him. Uh, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be entertaining. I'll go back and watch it later. Give Loomer some views, I guess. Unfortunately, but it is something I am kind of intrigued about. And let's see any of these comments here. Are you guys identical twins? Yes, we are identical twins, not identical twims. Um, talk about RFK more. Actually, I wanted to get to this. He's the only candidate there is for the people. Trump and Biden are not. And I think that's opinion. I'm not saying I totally disagree with everything you said there, but uh, let's look at RFK because this is actually being discussed. What happened with RFK, Ed, and Ro Khanna? Can you talk about
Yeah,
that?
so I mean, Ro Khanna sent a text message to RFK's VP pick. What's her name? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm forgetting her name. Her name is. Let me bring it up here. So he sent a message to. I'm sorry. I'm taking Nicole Shanahan. The message said, Nicole, thanks for the call and congrats on your selection. I want to be very respectful because I believe everyone has a right to run. But I would hope you might consider joining the Biden efforts at some point to do and push for bold things on regenerative agriculture and climate. Let us keep the lines of communication and dialogue open. Warmly, Roe. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think what Roe did is he's trying to say, listen, we don't need RFK Jr. to do many of these things that RFK Jr. is promising you to do because a lot of those things are things that Biden also wants to do. And if you join forces, we have a higher likelihood of getting these things done. Of course, Rose also saying, everybody's welcome to run for president, for vice president. But at the same time, it is dividing, and he's not specifically saying this, it is going to pull some votes away from Biden and some votes away from Trump. But I think right now it's more in a situation where it's pulling more votes from Biden than from Trump. So does RFK Jr. really have a good shot at winning? Probably not. When was the last time a third party candidate actually won an election? It's probably not going to happen, and it's only going to hurt Biden more than Trump. So if you don't want Trump to be president, a vote for RFK Jr. is giving Trump a greater likelihood of becoming president again.
Yeah, and Cindy said from Facebook, Kennedy is a vote for Trump. Agreed. But I do want to get to this story, and this is the story. Andy Kaczynski posted this, and this is coming from a CNN article. The campaign official for RFK Jr., who raised the possibility that voting for the independent presidential candidate would help Trump defeat Biden, previously promoted false claims that the 2020 election was rigged and attended Stop the Steal rallies after the election, including the rally on January 6, 2021. So there's some I guess links to the Trump campaign within the RFK Jr. campaign who are basically saying this is great for Trump. I guess my question is, if he believed that the election was stolen and him believing that it's going to help Trump, do you believe that too, or not too?
No, I mean, we know that RFK Jr. has connections to some individuals within the Trump from previous Trump administrations. Uh, like we've seen him with Steve Bannon, right? Steve Bannon has taken an active role in supporting RFK Jr.'s campaign. He's promoted him as a candidate to potentially draw votes away from Joe Biden in the 2024 election. Uh, the support's definitely there from some within the Trump campaign. Um, we of course see Trump saying some negative things about RFK because he doesn't want his voters to vote for him, right? But they are attempting to use RFK as this ploy to steal votes from Biden. At least some people in Trump's orbit are hoping that takes place.
Well, and here we go. Here's an article from Raw Story. Trump allies getting spooked that promoting RFK Jr. may blow up in their faces. And I do think that both candidates probably are a bit concerned. Uh, I go back and forth on like who I think might actually help or hurt more. But yeah, I agree with everything you
I mean,
said.
so far the polling data is showing it's hurting Biden more, at least in the swing states. Of course, this could change. We don't know exactly, what's going to happen before the election, but so far it appears that RFK Jr.'s uh, attempt to run for president is harming Biden more than it's harming Trump.
Yeah, I agreed. So I I think we'll move on from this story, and let me just check the comments really fast. Anybody leaving any good comments? The left isn't turning into Steve Bannon's podcast, tuning into Steve Bannon's podcast. That's true. Uh, this is
It's
reminiscent.
true. It's true. But the fact that Bannon is supporting him shows that maybe he realized that if they can get him on the ballot in some of these states, it will hurt Biden and help Trump.
Tom said this is reminiscent of Perot, Bush, and Clinton. It is, but I don't know if it's going to have the impact in that 1992 election. Uh, Perot took significant votes away from George H.W. Bush, and it basically led to a Clinton victory. I don't know if it's going to have that impact. I don't think it will because I think that he's too much. He's too close to both of them. I think he has things that Trump voters like, and he has things that Biden's voters like and don't like, right?
Well,
So
I mean, if you rewind to several months ago, maybe like 8 months or so ago, you'll probably remember all the Trump supporters saying that, "Hey, this RFK Jr. guy is a really good candidate. He should be the Democrats' nominee." So, I mean, obviously, they think quite fondly of him and a lot of his ideas, especially surrounding COVID, around social media speech. I think they all kind of like support a lot of that. But we also know that Trump's base is Trump's base, and it's almost impossible for anybody within Trump's base to leave Trump's side. So I think I don't think Democrats have that attachment that Trump supporters do. And I mean a lot of Trump supporters talk about this, how Trump gets so many people to his rallies where Biden doesn't get that many people. That's because Trump is a figure that those who support him 100%. Whereas Biden, it's like, okay, he has a lot of our same opinions on matters. He's definitely the better candidate for what I want to see done in this country than Trump is. But people aren't like, oh yes, we need Biden. Biden's awesome, but Biden's the best president ever. Biden, like most people on the left aren't like that, right?
agreed. I want to move on. Alex Jones. So there's this story uh, that Alex Jones confirmed, if you believe he's can confirm anything other
Well,
than gay
there's a
pride.
video. There's a video. You can probably play that video. It's the one
Yeah,
with that
I
woman.
actually will. I'll play the video in a second. So Alex Jones, this is what Benny Johnson said. Alex Jones confirms he will sue the FBI and CIA after CIA agent admitted agency targeted Jones to destroy his career. I'm planning on launching a lawsuit against the CIA and FBI. I've retained firms to sue the civil rights violations government racketeering operation. So first, I'll play this clip. It's posted by soundinvestigations.com. So I haven't heard of this group, but it appears that they kind of do things kind of like James O'Keefe and Project Veritas have done in the past, where it appears that this man is maybe thinks he's on a date with another guy, and the guy is actually the guy filming him, so he's bragging and trying to impress. But let me play it.
Who would be like a big influencer that you're after? You like I don't know, I don't even know these names, like a Fox News person or like a Tucker Carlson or like.
Oh, I'm sure he's right. You always want the biggest and loudest, like that. What was his name? The one that said the Sandy Hook didn't happen. So,
Alex Jones.
Yeah. So we were after him.
You are? Are you still after him? Why?
Because he's broke. He got found guilty and had to pay like $100 million.
So what? Why were you after him?
We're not anymore.
Just to get the money from him?
Yeah.
Was that court case used? Was that in CIA?
Sure it was.
That was the agency thing?
Well, actually, it was a defamation case. So it's a civil, not government. But we were looking at all of his followers, commenting, following, like, who's that going to be this to, right? So even though it's technically not not the agency, definitely, but the Bureau, for instance, it's not our purview. It's a civil matter. But since they got all this access to his stuff and it's there, what can we go find?
And did you find anything?
I can't tell you. Oh, we did. But so it's just kind of like realize the opportunity that you have.
So with Alex Jones, you were watching him long before anything ended up happening.
Probably it wasn't my office, but I mean we would have been well aware of what he was doing.
And the goal with him was what? Just to bankrupt him?
Oh, pretty much. And we let the families do it.
What?
We let the families do it.
Were they encouraged to do that by the Bureau? Like nudged?
We don't encourage people,
but like
we just say there's no federal statute being broken, but you do have the option for a civil case, and it's a pretty good case.
Nice.
In our opinion.
So, that makes so much sense. I have a cousin who's a lawyer, so that's a lot of these cases. They're kind of encouraged by the FBI.
Yeah, like there's nothing federal law we can do, but civilly, we can go at them that way. Chop his legs off.
And they did. So the FBI was happy.
We didn't care. We were like, oh.
Basically, the citizens did your job.
Yeah.
Wow. So you can encourage a civil lawsuit.
Not encourage. Educate.
What can you do with people like Alex Jones now? Because he's still out there. He's still chirping.
He can chirp.
They still watching him?
Yeah.
Why?
He did what we wanted.
Which was what?
Took his money away. We shut him up for a while. You're never going to shut him up for anybody.
Unless you put him in prison.
So I'm going to cut it off right there. So I want to know your thoughts, and then I'll give my thoughts on it. Yeah, so obviously you don't want bias in the FBI, but obviously there's going to be FBI agents who have political beliefs. Probably every single one of them side either Trump or Biden. This
right?
isn't
Or
FBI. This isn't the FBI. This was like a contractor for the CIA, I believe.
Okay, so no matter who it is, I do know for a fact that the FBI, the DHS, all those agencies, they love it when somebody they're investigating or someone they're looking into has to testify under oath. Why? Because they can use that. They love it when somebody's being investigated for a civil trial because that's investigations that they don't need. That's subpoenas that they don't need. That's information that they can use from a court that is essentially verified in court that they can use to go after somebody. So they love this. They love it when, if you're investigating Alex Jones because you think maybe he laundered money, and I'm just trying, I don't think Alex Jones laundered money, but you might, let's say it's a money laundering case. You're investigating him. You don't know, some of this stuff might come out in trial that you can use. Or like maybe you're investigating him for something. Like, I don't know why they were looking into him. They didn't say like I don't see any criminal activity that Alex Jones partook in. So, but maybe there was allegations of that, and maybe the FBI or CIA or whoever was looking into it. But
I think they were looking
that's not
into,
abnormal.
I think they were looking at January 6th and his presence January 6th. It didn't appear that he did anything that was.
And I mean, who is this guy? Like, I don't know. Like Tom down there said, is this guy credible? I don't think this guy's credible. I don't know. Like, I don't know who he is. He
So
could be
he's apparently some kind of contractor for the CIA. This is obviously he doesn't know he's being filmed. I don't think. It's like I said, it's kind of tactics that James O'Keefe used. He thinks he's on a date, likely, and see he's at a bar. Is he drinking? He has a cup of something, bragging about his powers. He didn't even know the guy's name. He didn't know Alex Jones's name at first. So I mean, how informed is he about all this? I don't know.
I mean,
Uh,
a contractor for the FBI isn't work or the CIA doesn't know the inner workings. They don't know what's being investigated. They're just doing what the FBI is paying them to do. So, I
right,
mean,
CIA,
if he's yeah, the CIA. So, I mean, if he's merely a contractor, I mean, it's absurd to, take his word as if he knows what the CIA was doing to Alex Jones. He only knows what he was paid to do. And
So
what was he paid to do?
contracting official. So I mean, I don't know what that means. Is that like a position at the CIA, or does that mean he's contracted by the CIA? I don't know. I'm sure they have to have clearance and all of that. But I I think that the way this material gets published, and like I said, James O'Keefe does it a lot. I think it obviously wouldn't hold up in a court. So the CIA can just say this guy's lying, like we didn't do this. Maybe he'll be called in to testify, and then he'll have to go under oath and tell the truth, actually, rather than bragging. And I'm not saying he's not telling the truth, but it's very likely that he's probably embellishing the truth, or at least I think so.
Yeah, and Tom actually, if you want to bring that last comment by Tom up, he said the CIA is prohibited from domestic operations. I believe you're correct, Tom. So it probably was something to do more with the FBI. I haven't looked into it enough. Maybe I'm missing something, but on the surface, it doesn't look like something extremely nefarious to me.
Agreed. I agreed, and maybe we'll get more information. I don't know. I think that I think that we need more information to actually talk more about this. I think otherwise it's all speculation.
And I mean, anything coming from Alex Jones or anything propagated by Alex Jones, you have to kind of take with a grain of salt. Well, he's an entertaining guy, right? But everything he says isn't 100% accurate.
What about the gay frogs?
Okay, I still don't even understand the whole thing with the gay frogs.
So I want to touch on Biden's comments last night in the Univision interview. This story I'm bringing up on the screen doesn't necessarily have to do with what I really want to touch on. And what I really want to touch on is I'll actually bring up my own tweet here that I made. Biden suggested that he might take executive action. Axios is actually reporting that Biden will likely take executive action on the border before the end of the month. So today is the 10th. So within 20 days, Biden appears likely to sign an executive order that will allow him to basically lock down the border and prevent asylum. So I'm guessing that any executive order he signs will basically say that asylum seekers can't seek asylum unless certain conditions, meaning that he would have the right to actually push asylum seekers out without being put before a judge, which would be huge if you are worried about the border.
Except I don't think it would hold up in court. That's the
I
problem.
don't think it will either. I think that the Refugees Act of 1980 will be brought up. I think that he's going to do this, and Biden actually said we're examining whether or not I have that power. Some are suggesting that I should go ahead and try it. Biden said, and if I get shut down by the courts, I get shut down by the courts. So I think he's kind of calling the bluff of Republicans, because Republicans are right now saying, "Oh, Biden has the power to just shut everything down." So let's try it.
I mean, I think to some degree he does, but it depends on how the courts interpret it. Like Tom said, he has the ability to shut down in a national emergency, but I don't like. I think the courts would look at that and be like, okay, is this really an emergency? Is it so? He can try it, and I definitely think he should try it, and I think he should allow the courts to ultimately make that decision. But really, what you need done is laws passed in Congress, because executive actions are not laws. the president can't create laws through executive actions. Those actions can recommend things that must be in line with the current laws. And then the court decides if they are or if they are not in line with current laws. Like Trump tried to use executive actions for the border, and multiple times they got shut down by the courts. I think the same would probably happen with Biden. Maybe there's certain actions he could put forth that wouldn't get overturned by the courts. I think that we had to wait and see, but I definitely think he should try.
Yeah. So MCGA MAGA ACAB, however you pronounce it, said Biden's sudden action is purely chasing votes. He should have done long ago. He left it open. So first of all, so I agree with you partially that I think that he's definitely rushing things because this is an election year. But to say that he should have done long ago is ignoring the past. In early 2023, Biden issued a directive that would have actually forced immigrants, asylum seekers, as they call themselves, some of them are, some of them aren't, who are coming from countries other than Mexico. So Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, like any nation south of Mexico, through Mexico to get here. That directive forced them to have to seek asylum in Mexico before seeking asylum in the United States. So they would have to be turned down in Mexico first. Now, do you know what happened, MAGA ACAB? The court said that his directive was illegal and he couldn't use that directive anymore. So to say that Biden hasn't tried anything or that the courts aren't rejecting anything isn't true. He's tried several things. He did this right when Title 42 ended. And Title 42 ended because it was no longer a health emergency, which,
I mean, yeah. Is it politically motivated? Yeah, I'm sure a lot of it is. If it wasn't an election year, maybe he wouldn't be doing it. I'd say the likelihood is that he's focused more on it because it is an election year and it's one of the pressing issues. But as president, if that's one of the pressing issues, shouldn't you be trying to deal with it? I mean, yeah, it's political, but at the same time, it's also the president's duty to take account of what people are concerned about and act on them. We could say the same thing about Trump with the abortion. He was so, he wanted Roe overturned. He was very much against abortion. And now that things are taking place in certain states, he's kind of backtracking a little bit. We saw that with Carrie Lake yesterday. After saying she was basically for against abortion at any time unless a mother's life is in danger. And now she's kind of coming out against the Arizona Supreme Court ruling that the 1864 law that says abortion is illegal unless the mother's life is at danger. She's coming out against them agreeing and saying that is now the law of the land. So people change based on what's going to get their votes 100%.
Yeah. So I think Tom also brings up another point. Did he appeal to the Supreme Court? So when that directive failed, did he appeal to the Supreme Court? I actually don't know that, and I don't think he did because I think I would have read about that. So I mean that's a fair point, I guess. But at the same time, they were trying to do other things as well, and like this bipartisan bill that it seemed like Republicans supported until Trump called them up, and at least according to the White House, called them up and told them not to support it anymore. So to say that the Republicans want to fix this and then they're basically refusing to fix it, I think says a lot as well. I love your podcast with Destiny. Thanks. It was fun. We headed down to South Beach and we had a good time. We brought our families. Actually had a little vacation and then did the podcast. Destiny's great.
Okay, so I actually asked about the appeals process. I asked Grok, so let's see what Grok said. President Biden's immigration-related executive orders faced multiple legal challenges and were overturned by the courts on several occasions. For instance, on July 25th, 2023, a federal judge struck down a stringent new asylum policy that the Biden administration called crucial to its efforts to curb illegal crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit allowed the Biden administration to continue enforcing its tough asylum policy on the southern border for at least several more weeks, while a federal appeals court said on August 3rd, 2023, that the Biden administration could continue enforcing its tough asylum policies
on the southern border for at least several more weeks. Okay, that's a little
So
bit of a glitch.
Tom,
While the federal appeals court said that Biden administration is just repeating. Okay, it's like a loop. It's just repeating the same thing. So
all right, so Tom said, what about this bill would have reduced the number of people coming across the border? It actually brought 1,500 new border agents into play. It added significant funding to secure the border through various means, whether it was technology.
Brian, didn't it also give Biden the ability to completely shut down the border if
So
numbers were over a certain amount per day, and the numbers weren't that high?
it was 5,000 a day, I believe. If so, 5,000 crossing a day, then Biden could immediately shut down the border. And by shut down the border, it means immediately make it so that you can expel asylum seekers without putting them before a judge. The issue isn't like shutting down the border, like hitting a button and saying, "Oh, the border's closed. Nobody can come in, or you're shot." The issue is that once somebody steps foot on American soil, the current laws state that they have to be given a critical fear interview and then be put before a judge. The backlog
Put
is
before a
literally
judge
6 years.
if it appears that they have a critical fear.
Right. So if it appears that they have a critical fear after this interview, they had to be put before a judge. And by appears, that definition is, I mean, it's hard to define, right? So if somebody
It's
says my life is in danger, it's hard to prove. So that's why you need a judge. Now the backlog is 6 years because they don't have enough judges and lawyers to represent these people. So when he says that I can shut down the border, it's basically saying, oh, you don't need to put these people before a judge because asylum is no longer permitted at this point. So I think that it's things get skewed. The border issue is so complicated. Republicans try and make it out to be like this one issue. Oh, Biden can just shut down the border. Okay, so put the entire National Guard on the border, right? So you do that. Now what? Somebody climbs over the wall. What do? They're on U.S. soil. The law says they need to be put before a judge. Do you shoot them before they climb over the border? Climb over the wall? Do you push them off the wall? Do you have border agents just pushing them off the wall so they can't get over?
Well,
What is the solution?
Well, there's not a good solution, right? Because you still want we still need immigration. How many farms down south are using illegal immigrants, are employing illegal immigrants to work on their farms, doing jobs that many Americans and many American citizens refuse to do because they can find higher paying jobs that, aren't as arduous as those farming jobs. So people who want to, get rid of all illegal immigrants who are in the country and expel them all and deport them all, that can't happen. If that was to happen at any given time, all at once, the effects on the economy would be so huge that we'd fall into a recession or perhaps even a Great Depression.
Agreed. And TX Snack Bastard said, why don't we put those new IRS agents toward immigration reform to make the process faster? So you're going to use IRS agents to become judges or lawyers? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think he means the resources being used to pay the IRS agents. But
yeah, go ahead.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Did you know how much more money the U.S. has recovered in the last year because of hiring of new IRS agents? It's way more than the amount of money that it costs to hire these IRS agents.
Yeah, it's profitable for the U.S. to hire IRS agents. It's not a cost. It's profits that they're generating. They're generating a surplus. So Tom says, yes, it is complicated. What is your conclusion about the 3 times the number of people coming across that came in 2021? I think, there's a lot of factors at play here. Mostly it's the governments of these countries like Honduras, like Guatemala, these countries that have terrible governments. People want to get out. People are fleeing. People realize that their lives are in danger. Not all of them. Some people are just coming for a better life. Maybe even the majority of them are coming for a better life. But they want to get out more than ever. And I think that's the biggest factor here. At the same time, yet kids aren't being separated at the border. So families feel more inclined to come now than under Trump because they don't have to worry about, losing their kids, maybe
losing their kids forever.
The big thing you're missing here, Ed, as to why there is a sudden surge, is that Title 42 was implemented for how long was it? I think 2 years.
Yeah, about
Now,
that.
none of these people were able to enter because of Title 42. If they did, they could be quickly expelled under Title 42. So you have this bottleneck of asylum seekers or immigrants who claim to be asylum seekers all streaming into Mexico. And once Title 42 was taken away, because it basically had to be, it was no longer a health emergency, these people surged through the border. So I think it's a combination of that. I think that's probably the biggest thing, at least the initial surge, along with what's happening socio-political and economic issues in these other countries in Central and South America.
Yeah, so another thing, Dorado, can you put his comment up there, Brian? Dorado? He says, but they do have to worry about them being trafficked more than ever. No, so parents coming over the border with their children, sure, there could be human traffickers bringing other people's kids over the border, right? But these people are investigated. There's individuals, there's Border Patrol who's sitting down with these people, giving them their credible fear index, interviewing the children by themselves, separate from the parents, where these kids can say, I'm being trafficked. These aren't my parents. So the ones that are actually claiming asylum are not likely being trafficked. Maybe people who are being snuck over the border and trying to get around Border Patrol. Yeah, sure, that does happen at some points in time. It's not happening nearly as much as most people think it is, I don't think.
Yeah, all fair points. Maybe we should move on to another topic here. Let's see what else. And like I said in the beginning of the show, it's kind of unfiltered. We didn't look at the news beforehand. I just want to kind of cover the news as it
I
happened.
looked at a little bit of the news beforehand, so you have to tell the truth.
How about inflation? So I think Republicans, they all shout, inflation's horrible, Biden's ruining the economy, blah, blah, blah. So today's inflation report was slightly higher than what economists had predicted. They predicted basically a 3.4% inflation year over year, month over month, and it came in at 3.5%. So if you compare March of 2024 to March of 2023, prices are 3.5% higher. Economists predicted 3.4%. This is greatly reduced from, I think it was in the 8 to 9% range at one point. Things are getting better inflation-wise, but people have to realize it's two different things, right? There's the inflation rate, right? And then there's how much inflation is increasing, or that rate is increasing or decreasing. The inflation rate is decreasing since about a year and a month ago. Inflation continues to rise as it almost always does. I think if you go back, I think it was like 80 years, I think maybe 7 years, we had a deflationary economy, and deflation is actually much worse than inflation, despite what someone would think.
So both Brian and I are both economics majors from Rutgers University. And one of the first things you learn, I think is probably intro to macroeconomics, is that deflation is something you never want to see in an economy.
Yeah, and the reason you don't want deflation in the economy is, even though prices are going down, but what happens when prices go down? If prices start dropping, so for instance, a Tesla Model S, instead of it being $70,000, it's dropped to $50,000, right? So people are going to spend less and save more. So the economy is going to shrink. And when people spend less, that means there's going to be less jobs. These companies are going to start making less money. So it all leads to a spiraling down of an economy, usually, in most cases.
And I mean, so if your product is being lowered in value, that means that the inputs must also be lowered in value, and it's going to affect everyone in a negative way. So it's definitely something you want to avoid at all costs in most cases. Like, typical prices falling, like, okay, the price of food fell this month. I mean, that's not negative. But deflation overall, where the sum of all products and services are falling, is not good whatsoever.
Yeah, and so yes, inflation. We still have inflation, but that's normal. We want inflation, as probably problematic as that might seem to some people who don't understand. And I'm not trying to talk down on people. I think that most people don't totally understand how the economy works. It we're supposed to have inflation. So a 3.5% inflation rate year over year actually isn't terrible. The Fed would like to get that down to about 2%. 2% is what they consider a
Healthy.
pretty healthy economy, and that's when rates can drop,
So
right?
so
And
what what a lot of people are doing, a lot of mostly on the right, are trying to use inflation as the measure for how the economy is doing. Number one, it's a global phenomenon. It's not Joe Biden that caused inflation. Could he have contributed somewhat to it? Yes, so did Trump with his massive spending. But overall, the economy is actually doing very, very well if you look at real GDP per capita. So, real GDP per capita means the inflation adjusted GDP, which is a gross domestic product of the country, meaning all of the products and services created within this country per person who lives in this country. That's at a high that we haven't seen in a long time, a high we haven't seen since before President Trump was in office. So we're actually in one of the best spots in a long time when it comes to real GDP per capita. And that is, if you had to pick one stat to measure the success of an economy, that would be the one.
yeah, and I want to answer Tom's question here. Uh, does CPI include energy? And it actually does. The general CPI number, consumer price index number, includes energy and food. But they do break it down so that they break it into, they'll have the CPI number, and then they'll have how much of it's not energy, right? So excluding energy. So the core number definitely includes energy. So I mean, gas has risen in the last, I guess, month and a
Yeah,
half.
so I believe the gasoline prices and fuel prices are what make up the most of the inflation for this month. That was what was up the most. Food actually fell slightly. So I mean, and housing went up. So housing and fuel went up where food fell. So I mean, you can make what you want of it. I mean, anybody can take any economy at any time and paint a picture that is thriving or paint a picture that is doing terrible. You could find numbers during the Great Depression that look good when you just keep them aside by themselves and not show the rest of the data.
Yeah, and Natalie said gas is triple what I used to pay. Drilling in the U.S. is common sense. I agree, drill in the U.S. But here's a fact, and it's inconvenient to some people, and that is that we are drilling for more oil today than when Trump left office. In fact, we're drilling for more than at any time in American history. So America is oil rich. The issue that's causing gas prices to rise is that America doesn't just use the oil that they drill for. There's different refineries that operate for and create different types of oil products. So we still rely, and we did during the Trump era too. Like we were never actually energy independent. By energy independent, they meant that we were actually producing more oil than we were using, but we were still relying on outside sources for oil.
People don't realize that it's not the government that is importing and exporting oil. So energy independence, the way a lot of people define it, is that we are producing enough to provide America with the oil they need. And like, that doesn't mean you're actually doing it, right? So there's businesses that are importing oil, there's businesses that are exporting oil. So we're still bringing oil in from other countries. We still were under Trump. It's energy independence doesn't actually mean what a lot of people think it means.
Right. And right now you have OPEC controlling the international supply pretty much, and they are cutting supply. They want the price to rise. And whether they want this price to rise because they want to make more profit per barrel, or maybe they want to push their own political agenda, if you know what I mean. Like if Saudi Arabia wanted Trump in office, and so did some of the other Middle Eastern countries that were a part of OPEC, they would probably have an incentive to reduce supply to increase the price. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to speculate there because I think that the politics of the Middle East are very complicated. I think that yeah,
And
they
yeah, and I mean, I'm sure there's politicians in these countries that support Biden and politicians in these countries that support Trump. So it it's almost impossible to come up with a clear explanation of why they're doing this and what motivates what they're doing.
Ed and Bry, could you afford to buy your hose today? Yeah, like I just bought a hose. It was like $50. So yeah, I could still
I just
afford
planted
it.
a garden, so I need an extra hose. So
I know you mean house.
I think I can afford another hose.
Yeah, I know you mean house, and actually, like, I wouldn't buy my house today. It would be too expensive. Could I afford to? Is different than should I? And I did pretty well buying my house when I did, but I wouldn't buy it today because it has gone up, especially in Florida. Home prices in Florida have increased substantially, and that's for a number of reasons. I think a lot of snowbirds are moving to Florida still, although it has been a recent exodus of some because of prices down here, property prices as well as insurance prices. Uh, Insurance is crazy, especially in hurricane zones. Let's see. Let's move on to this. Do you think the large corporations raising their prices higher than the rate of inflation? What do I think of that? Do you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's happening, right? It's definitely happening, at least for some corporations. But is that a bad business move? Is it a nefarious business move? Are they doing it? Oh, look, we can screw these people out of money. I'm going to raise the prices. Not necessarily. I mean, corporations they need to please their shareholders. They want to generate as much revenue and profit as they can for their shareholders. So to say that this is wrong or right, I don't know. I mean, technically they're doing what's best for the company. That's how corporations run. Uh, you know, I think wages are catching up as well. So we have wages that are catching up, going up faster than
Wages went up
inflation right now.
5.1% last month, which greatly outstrips inflation.
So I mean, there's lagging factors and then there's leading factors. You hear about lagging and leading indicators of markets. Like we know that inflation is typically a leading indicator, a leading factor, I guess I should say, whereas wages come
Well, no,
later.
inflation would be lagging. It lags behind the actual events that take place that causes
Well,
it. So,
I'm referring to like wages though. It leads
got it.
wages. It leads wages. Wages lag behind inflation because it has to catch up. The wages have to catch up. If you're running a business, right, and prices are going up, you're paying more for your supplies. You have to then charge more for your product. And then only after you start generating enough income at that price level can you increase the wages of your workforce. And that's what we're seeing now. Those wages are starting to go up. I think it's going to catch and then surpass what we've saw in inflation, but we had to give it another year or so.
Yeah, and I agree. And Tom, I'd be interested to know, did you rebuy in Florida or out of state? Uh, Prices definitely have gone up over the course of the last 8 or 9 years. But yeah, I think maybe that should wrap it up. It's been almost an hour. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for everybody kind of participating. It makes the show a lot more interesting, I think. But yeah, we'll do these again, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. We'll see. Talk to you all soon.